Leaders, welcome to CTRL+ALT+DELETE with Lisa Duerre live. I'm Lisa Duerre, your guide through the ever-evolving landscape of leadership and tech. We're breaking down barriers and bringing our community together in real time. So whether you're tuning in from the comfort of your office chair or catching the replay later, please know that your voice matters. Speaking of voices, that's what firm leadership is all about. Listening, inviting wisdom, and embracing the collective intelligence of our teams. Because let's face it, no one leader has all the answers, and that's where you come in. As we dive into today's discussion, please be an active participant. Drop your thoughts, questions, and insights into the comments below. This isn't just my podcast, it's ours. Together, we're rebooting Leadership Drive. And before we kick things off, I'd like to mention that this podcast and live stream experience is brought to you by RLD Group. As your host and the CEO of RLD Group, I'm grateful for the opportunity to collaborate and bring in this podcast to life. Together, we're committed to empowering organizations, teams, and leaders like you, and your engagement in this conversation is invaluable. So without further ado, let's jump into the conversation, get comfy, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and let's make some magic happen. Welcome, everyone, to CTRL+ALT+DELETE with Lisa Duerre Live. I'm your host, Lisa Duerre, CEO and co-founder of RLD Group, and it is my absolute pleasure to be coming to you live today to talk about resilience. Because we know, as leaders, we need to perform, adapt, lead in the face of constant change. And what I'm here to tell you and remind us all is that resilience is at the heart of that. And RLD Group's firm leadership model highlights 4 key components: flexibility, intuition, resilience, and mindfulness. And so we're going to double click on resilience today. And I want to share with you a statistic. 46% of leaders say they lack the resilience needed to meet the demands of 2024. 46% of leaders say they lack the resilience needed to meet the demands of 2024. That's from Forbes. So I can only imagine what this 46% of leaders are sitting around thinking with the constant pressure, the always on, the rapid amount of change, and the realization that no one leader has all the answers. So that's what today's about. We're going to support you in that. We're going to have this conversation. We are going to be diving in. And Anne Marie, I'm thrilled you're here. Thank you. Hi, Lisa. This is a great topic. Glad I can make it. Yes. This is an interactive podcast. So please drop your thoughts in. Anne Marie, bring in your perspective. We're thrilled you're here. Because the reality is we're stronger together. And so I'm here and I have a wonderful guest who is a repeat guest, a dear colleague, friend, thought leader, someone who just inspires me to think differently every time I talk to him. His name is Michael Dietrich-Chastain. He is the CEO and executive coach at ARC Integrated. He specializes in change management and workplace culture. I got to know Michael because I have his changes cards, and he wrote a book about change. And he is just someone who you're going to learn from and with today. And I want to just highlight that he works with leaders across industries to help them strengthen resilience and lead through tough transitions. And today he's going to share some powerful strategies for bouncing back from challenges and leading with clarity, even while under pressure. But before we jump in and I bring Michael up, I want to share another statistic with you that Michael actually made me aware of. So the statistic is just about how critical resilience and mental health are when it comes to leadership. And this is about depression. So depression costs U.S. employers approximately $187.8 billion each year. $32.9 billion of that comes from lost productivity alone. And that's why we want to talk about this today. Fostering resilience isn't a leadership skill, it's a necessity. So Michael, we want to come on up? Let's have a chat. Michael Dietrich-Chastain is here, everyone.
Lisa, it's so great to be with you today, as it always is. And yeah, I'm excited to connect and chat. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. And, thanks for depressing me with depression statistics as we prepped, right? So I don't know if people know on our show, but what I always ask a guest to bring a statistic that matters to them, to like highlight what's on their mind. And man, I got your pre-work with this statistic and was like, oh, we need to talk about this. And I know with your background, it's even more potent because of all of the lived experience that you share. So do you want to give maybe a 2-minute elevator pitch on your background? And then I'd love to know why that statistic was what you wanted to start this conversation with.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. That's great. So my whole career, I like to say it's been in human development in some capacity. And so out of undergraduate school, I'll back up even further than that. In undergraduate, I studied psychology, specifically industrial organizational psychology, which is a lot of the work that you and I do today.
Yeah.
And got a corporate job out of school, which ironically, I didn't realize it then. This is 20 years ago, but a lot of it was leadership coaching. What we were doing at the time was placing employees into organizations that were our clients. And a lot of the work was navigating the challenges between employees and leaders around communication and expectation and performance, et cetera. And so that got me interested in taking a further dive into human development. So I went back and got a master's actually as a counselor, and then eventually as a licensed psychotherapist. And so I lived in the mental health world for about a decade, doing everything from private practice work to group therapy to hospital system, jail system, led teams of therapists, and still had this interest in teams and leaders and culture. So I made a pivot back to the corporate world and have been there since. I hung up my therapist hat in 2017. I still do hold a license, but haven't practiced, going on, I guess, about 8 years now. And but it still certainly informs the way I think about group dynamics and healthy cultures and healthy systems. As like there's so much truth that exists regardless of the type of system that we're in, whether that's a group, a family, a community, an ecosystem of a company, and how those function at their very best and how they function at their very worst. There's some interesting parallels across all those. I'll pause there. That's probably enough of an intro.
Oh, I love the intro so much because people need to know this, like what's informing this conversation, because I can guarantee you there are other people I would interview that aren't going to show up with the depression statistic tied to productivity, right? Like Control Alt Delete is about rebooting leadership drive. And sometimes rebooting leadership drive is simply pausing to ask a different question, right? So when I had my statistics, it was about the 46% of leaders say they lack the resilience. You took it one step further, which is like, oh yeah, and there's depression underneath here too. And when I think about the world that we're in, and the importance of resilience, I know we have this in common. So RLD group, we say I, we, us, right? There's self-awareness at the leader level, at the team level, and the system or organizational level. And I feel like one of the gifts we can give people is some practical thoughts and insights from you around the lens from the individual leader, but also at the system level, because they both matter and everywhere in between. So, what's at the heart for you when you think about just resilience and leadership? What do you want to just presence first as we'll, kind of unpack this together?
Yeah, what comes to mind, and just to circle back to, what kind of inspired me to find that statistic originally, is that, organizations I feel like are at a bit of a crossroads right now, in that they're being faced with high demands from not only their own employees, but the employee and the talent market in general. And those demands are generally that the cultural expectations that these, folks want to have are higher than they were maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And so I say organizations are at a crossroad because I think they will either continue to move towards building ecosystems that, are collaborative and inspiring and innovative and maybe lean further into health, or they'll hold on to old ways of being and likely fall off completely is my prediction. And so when you think about, resilience in general, I would say that this depression statistic is a way to think about how might organizations lean so far into building healthy environments, not that they're responsible for solving something like depression, but they're absolutely impacting it in one way or another. And so, my invitation would be figure out how to lean further into healthy environments. And as I was thinking about this, I got 3 strategies that I think are connected to what leaders might do to help, again, not solve this statistic, but certainly influence it.
So this is when I tell everyone, grab your pens. This is a writer downer. Now we have Michael's 3 strategies. Okay, we're ready.
Well, the first one that comes to mind, and I'm guessing you'll appreciate this in the work that you do, and I'm actually love your reflection as I say this.
Sure.
But I think leaders can really find more time to seek out incongruencies would be my first strategy. And here's what I mean by that. Oftentimes organizations have expectations that, hey, well, we have an employee wellness program, and we have an EAP, and we claim to be, places of psychological safety, and all these kind of pontifications that they make. But then the reality is that they're putting pressures on people to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week based on the very clear job descriptions that people are given, or the unwritten expectations. So this invitation of finding incongruencies is to say, are we actually creating conditions for our employees that match what we say our values are? Mm-hmm. And if there is an incongruency there, we can pretty much promise that that's having an influence on things like mental health. And so I'm curious, Lisa, do you find the same kind of opportunity in your, world and view of the market?
Michael, I'm trying to stop the smile. I mean, if we did nothing else today and we stopped at step one of what you're saying, seek out incongruencies. So we are a firm that does conversations worth having. And, one of the premises of conversations worth having is make the invisible visible.
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know for sure, and I'm guilty. By the way, I am guilty of being incongruent. I am a human being living a human world, right?
Raise my hand as well.
But yeah, we did a workshop last week. We did an executive forum with the senior leadership team, brought them together for 2 days. And, we specialize in burnout prevention and culture change, right? So all kinds of conversations were coming up, and the incongruencies, even in the Q&A between each other, much less the leaders coming in to talk about the roadmaps or the updates, right? Mm-hmm. It's such a gift if we can pause and just go, oh, that doesn't align. This doesn't feel right. Because the reality is, this is all the inside thoughts and energy that's running behind. And then you're trying to figure out, okay, I'm supposed to have work-life balance, but now you're texting me at midnight on a Saturday. What am I doing here? Right. Great example. I think it's up to the leader to look at themselves and how they handle themselves and then look outward. So I say, yes, yes, yes. Seek out incongruencies.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. And these strategies are certainly there's a lot more to them, but given the time that we have, it's perhaps a good start.
Yeah.
The second one I was thinking about is about behavior modeling and increased involvement. So one of the things that I think is a common sentiment in the workplace is the idea that we have certain expectations at various altitudes of an organization. Mm-hmm. Right. And sometimes those expectations are different. And so when it comes to leaders driving the behaviors that they want, and this is maybe obvious, but if they want to drive behaviors, they have to model those behaviors. Yeah. And maybe even more importantly, if they want to drive behaviors, they also have to be involved with various levels across their organization so that there can be, learning across the system, and so that those, other employees can see the level of commitment and dedication that the leaders have, not just, hearing it in, quarterly updates or hearing it in, an email that comes out once a month or whatever it is. So that would be strategy number 2.
Okay. Strategy number 2, behavior modeling is what I wrote down. Mm-hmm. Did I get that right?
And involvement.
And involvement. Okay. That's my word I can't read. So behavior modeling and involvement. One of the things that I love being in conversation with you so much. This whole thank you. The whole concept of as a leader being curious. I love when we do the exercise with leaders, tell me the best leader you ever had. And it's always they were curious. They asked me questions. They let me solve problems. They were open, right? And yet we get in this back-to-back meetings, shut the ears down and just get the mouth is open, just telling. So my invitation to, if I were to double click on what you just offered, would be to, tune in. And are you listening more than you're talking? Are you curious more than you're reactionary? Because your behaviors feed the field and they set the tone. I love 100%.
This. Yeah. And I think this is, I'll just highlight this other thought about it, that this is particularly of importance when you're dealing with smaller to medium-sized businesses. I think when we're in ecosystems that are tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of employees, there's almost a bit of a safety distance that higher level leaders can be within, right? Because their behaviors are less obvious or observable. But when you get into small and medium-sized businesses, culture is largely driven by the executive team, because their behaviors and ethos is so easily seen by the rest of the organization.
Yeah. Yeah. I love this. I can't get the smile off my face because it's just, this is the conversation I wanted to have today. We have a comment from Anne Marie. I would like to bring it up, and it says, so much truth in this. Many companies have values, yet their actions don't match the values. This needs to change. And Anne Marie, thank you for pointing that out. And Michael, your double click on organizational size and impact is like right in line. So I think we're tracking here. So thank you, Anne Marie, for that.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah. Michael, what's number 3? Third strategy. What do you got?
Yeah, this is going to sound counterintuitive.
Oh, I love this. Okay.
But and maybe make a step back a little bit, but it's the idea of having higher standards and less tolerance. And let me say that, because people might hear that and think, what do you mean? We're in a culture of more tolerance, right?
Yep.
What I mean to say is that, I think the challenge that can exist in some organizations is that leaders that have a certain area of performance are given a pass. And even though those leaders might be driving cultural toxicity and influencing things like depression, or influencing things like, productivity, absenteeism, presenteeism, these are all the things that go down with when you look at stuff like depression. What I mean by high standards and less tolerance is to create a higher bar for what we expect from our leaders, and to not tolerate those that are creating these waves of cultural toxicity. Because this is, I think, an important message for organizations to hear, like, that is creating a huge financial loss for companies. And I think this depression statistic is one lens to look at how bad cultural moves can cost an organization a lot of money. So that would be tip number 3.
Well, your tip number 3 is like a ninja mic drop, because you did a pattern interrupt too, right? The contrarian approach, like, it's brilliant. And from a leadership standpoint, like, I think everybody's leaning in going, what? Right? Higher standards, less tolerance. My own experience with this, what I found so interesting in the last probably 6 months is we do a lot of executive coaching, right? It's one of our main things we offer. And I'm finding that some of the requests we're getting now are all those toxic leaders, where a lot of times we work with hypos, or we work with like org change or restructuring. And lately my phone's been ringing a lot with, oh my gosh, this guy's a brilliant salesperson, but he pisses everybody off. Or, this woman is like amazing, but this blind spot is in the way. Yeah. And the conversation I have with the people coming to us for services is really around, what are the standards? And I think the tolerance is, I'm going to use your words, the tolerance that, because if you are the best salesperson on the planet, but you leave a wake of destruction and toxicity all around you, you're not the best salesperson. Exactly. You may be the best person getting numbers, but for the business, the impact is profound. And I think sometimes leaders are afraid to take action because they're worried like they won't close the deal. But I wonder, and I invite them to consider, if that toxic stuff is going on, that productivity is down everywhere else, what would it take to raise the numbers by having a culture that is inclusive with conversations that are having and, getting above the line, rather than everyone hiding from the toxic dude who makes all the numbers, So I just want to present.
It is. It's a great point. And to be fair to the complexity of this, when your example is a great one, right? Like, sales is an easy example.
Yes.
It's so obvious to see, oh, this person is bringing in X amount. It's harder to evaluate what the cost is. And
very much so. Yes.
I guess I want to kind of presence the sensitivity to the organizational leaders, because it does require kind of more complicated evaluation. However, it's an important one, because as we're describing, the loss is definitely higher than the gain, right? If you look at the like you said, the wake.
Yeah. And another example I have in this that I think, can we double click for a second, get your perspective?
Yeah.
So HR leaders, right? So senior people, chief people peeps. I've been around some of them that are like, well, you have a choice. You don't like it, you can leave. And I'm always like, oh, like, is that really how you want people to feel right now? Like, do we not want engagement and inspiration and like teamwork? But this whole like, the return to office, the return to work mandates I was seeing a
Yeah.
lot. Well, you have a choice. There's other jobs. And I'm always like, oh, what missed opportunity if you were to say, like, what makes working here awesome for you? How might we work together to make that awesome? And we need you here for these days too. It's just such a different message than this
Mhm.
whole, I'm not going to change anything. You have a choice. Have you
Yeah.
seen this? Am I the only one?
I have seen it, and I think that organizations that have that kind of position are putting themselves at great risk.
I agree. Yeah.
Because they're right. Like, yeah, they can go somewhere else, and they will. They'll go to the organization that's more flexible and more interested in helping them achieve their goals, and more collaborative and more curious and innovative. And
yeah,
it gets back to this idea of the crossroads that we're at right now.
Yeah. I love this. Thank you for letting me do that. So maybe you have a story of, so let's say I'm the tech leader right now. I'm in back-to-back meetings. Everything's hectic. I'm not sleeping well, right? I'm not hydrated. I'm skipping lunch. And we're here talking about resilience. And they're basically like, I can't even get a good night's sleep. So what is some advice or insights you would give a leader to just take the incremental first step to build resilience in the world that they're in right now with constant change and, chaos?
Yeah, it's a great question. And a couple things come to mind, but I guess I'll preface what I'm going to say with the fact that, everybody, as you know, like every individual situation is so unique. And so, and I know we both do a lot of coaching. And so it's like how we might coach one person might be a little different than the other, but generally speaking, I appreciate the notion that you mentioned about like baby steps, right? Like the small incremental changes. And so if someone is not caring for themselves at all, the invitation might be in what way might they start, right? Is there, can they do 3 minutes of meditation a day? Can they, drink a little bit of extra water? Can they go home? They're going home at 7 at night every night. Can they go home at 6, 2 nights a week? Just small steps to create a little momentum. And then the other thing I would say would be a question, which is, where in your life can you hold tighter boundaries? And I say that because I think with this idea, this overworked, value that can exist in some organizations, some, places in the world, like that's maybe a good question to start with. Where can I tighten my boundaries on what I'm willing to tolerate and not tolerate? Another question might be in regards to building motivation for change would be to ask, if nothing changes, what is it going to cost me?
That is awesome.
If I don't change anything at all, what is that going to cost me? What's that going to cost my primary relationship, my connection with my family, connection with my kids, my parents, my community, my whatever it is? So I would invite that question as well. And I think that might be a couple places to start.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So many times we do like start, stop, continue, or the wheel of life, all the different ways to kind of assess your world. The other day I was doing something with Jeremy Hobbs.
Oh, love Jeremy
Hobbs. Yeah, I was working with him on something the other day, and he drew a visual of time spent.
Yeah.
And then overlaid it. And I was like, I know this because I look at my calendar, but for whatever reason, he did a 24-hour clock. And I was like, this really got through to me because I was so used to just like color coding and time blocking and all these things. And I thought, how do we tell more people to look at a 24-hour period and then pie chart it up too to see? Because what matters,
Cool.
Our friend Danny Friedland, right? Dr. Danny Friedland, what matters most right now? And I think that that's just such a gift to the planet to be really clear that, you don't have to be in every meeting and you don't have to do everything, but the things you're going to do them well. And it includes taking care of yourself.
Yeah. I love that. I love that question too, because there's like some freedom in that question. Your answer can change, season to season in life. And it's a beautiful question to ask.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So I want to talk about your changes cards, because anyone who follows me on social media, there's random posts of my fingernails holding cards as I take road trips or airplane flights. Heck, I brought these last week to the executive forum and I was dealing them out, right?
I love it. Thank you.
This is a book you wrote about change, which the world is in the midst of change. And these cards are such a tool to help people. So you have a solo journey, team journey, right? Everywhere in between. with this topic of resilience, how might your book or these cards be a resource to any leader out there? Because I know how I use them, but you develop them. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'll sprinkle in mine.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm curious to your thoughts as well.
Yeah.
Well, I'll back up a little bit and answer like how or what informed the writing of that book and the cards, which was a number of years ago. I started to ask this question of, across the leaders that we've worked with and all the work I did in mental health for all those years, working with everything from, depression, anxiety, substance abuse, relationship issues, and severe and persistent mental health stuff that, people were challenged by. So when I looked at all the, hundreds and hundreds of clients we've worked with, what were the commonalities amongst how they create change in their life? Right? Whether I'm dealing with something in mental health or I'm trying to get an employee to, improve their productivity or improve their emotional intelligence or get this team to be more innovative, whatever it is. And so after a lot of my own research into kind of anecdotal evidence and then looking at some of the science in the field, these 7 pillars emerged. And that's what the book is about. These 7 pillars that influence our ability to not only create change, but also respond to it. And the argument presented, it's a bidirectional model. The argument I pose is that our ability to create change and respond and be resilient to uncertainty is predicted by the same 7 variables, these 7 pillars. And so the book came first, and then the card deck is a series of questions across these 7 pillars. 7 questions per pillar, so 49 questions, and it's in the spirit of helping us think through what's important to me across this pillar. Where do I need to change? What do I need to focus on more of? Where is the strength, et cetera? And it's a long answer to your question. I'll say one more thing, which is, what might leaders do with this as a resource? My invitation would be to consider, and I can give a link if they want to get some stuff for free, a changes playbook that we have, is to look at these 7 and consider which one of these am I optimizing and which one am I ignoring. And my prediction is that there will be a few that they're good at, and there will be a few that they're ignoring. And those ones that we're not giving our attention to are likely the hurdles that are getting in our way of creating the change we want or being resilient.
So I'm going to say a couple of things real quick for people, because what you've said is so important. So the first thing is we will drop a link for sure. And maybe you can private chat it to Randy right now, Michael, and he can take it if you have it. Sure. The second thing is, having used these cards so many times, the categories, every C is a category, H is a category, right? Even just reflecting for 10 minutes when you just pull a random card, I believe is an act toward resilience, because you're getting the pause, you're having a focus, and then you're questioning. And what was so interesting with my client last week, we did a little group activity. I just said, pull a card and tell me your thoughts, what you want to share.
Oh, cool.
And one of the cards was like, what's an inspiring idea that you've had? And the person who pulled it was like, I've never thought about that. Right? And another person pulled a card. It was like, what do you need more of in your life right now? Something like that. And she said patience. And then the patience inspired the conversation, and the inspiring idea inspired the conversation. And the leader was like, I'm so busy I haven't thought about that. And the reason I wanted to bring your card deck in today is, if we talk about resilience, like something practical and tangible, your book is phenomenal. The card deck, like I said, I take it everywhere. And I think it's a real tangible thing for people. And, your audiobook is narrated by your voice. And so whenever I listen to the audiobook, it's like I'm hanging out with you. And, that's not a big, heavy lift. That's a simple thing. Yeah. But my gosh, I really want to highlight this, because I think sometimes leaders don't want to go read a book. They just need something simple. And something simple could be pull a card.
Yeah. The power of questions, right? The power of a good question or a good series of questions can set us on an entirely different direction, just like the example that you gave.
Yeah. Is there a card that you think might be useful for us? Like, should I pull one? Is there a category you want me to pull from? Or I don't know. I'm just playing with you real time.
I'll give you maybe an exercise actually that could be fun for people to think about. And even if you don't have a deck, you could do this with like a series of random questions. But when we work with teams, we'll often do this. We'll take the questions and we'll flip them up, so the question is up, and we'll put them on a table, kind of spread them out a little bit, and we'll invite each team member to pick a card that represents a question that this team needs to be asking itself but isn't. And so as an example, I'll show you, I'll just give you some random examples. I've got a deck right here. So for instance,
by the way, no one knew I was doing this. Michael had no idea. This is live. I'm just like, let's go here. Right.
Yeah. I love the spontaneity. Yeah. This is super cool. So I just randomly chose this question.
Okay.
Right,
let's see. Who do you know that is very courageous and why? Who do you know? Okay. Got it.
So if I'm in this team exercise, I might pull this question and I might say, the reason I chose this question for our team is because we are not taking enough risks. And I don't know anybody on this team that's courageous enough. And so I think we need to start taking more risks, right? That's an example.
Yeah.
Another example is, just pull another one here. Here's one. This one says, what is a belief that you have that's no longer serving you? So I might pull this one, and I might pull this one, and I might say, we as a team have been approaching this particular problem with the same belief again and again, and it's not helping. We need to change how we're thinking about this problem. And so I'm pulling this card to invite us to do that.
I just want to say, whenever you're doing your budgets, pull that card.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
right. Exactly. Whenever you're doing headcount planning, pull that card. This is great. So what I want to do, Michael, with the time that we have, is I really, really want to just invite people to play this again, share it with their team, have this conversation, right? And one of the things that I think I want to wrap us up with is music, because I believe resilience can also come through song, right? Or sound. And sometimes it's a meditation CD. Sometimes I'm, playing Beyonce and everything in between. But when you think about the topic of resilience and honestly, the statistic about the depression, right? And all that comes in this conversation today, is there a song you want to leave us with that might just remind us of this conversation and perhaps resource the person who's listening to it?
Yeah, I'm going to give you three really quick.
I love it.
Okay. And they're for three different reasons. So one of the things that I think helps with resilience is to amp us up.
Yep.
Right. To amp us up. And there's a rock band that I really like. They're called A Perfect Circle. Okay. Now, for some people that might be too intense, too over the top, but certainly like amping up our energy, music can do that. So whatever's going to do that for you would be my invite. Second is flow state. And there's a group I listen to often when I'm trying to work and get a lot done. They're called Tycho, Tycho, and they're kind of like ambient-ish type of music. Wonderful, wonderful group. The third resource that I just learned about recently is an app that's really good. It's called Othership. And it's a breathwork app, but they have all sorts of music tracks on it that align with breathwork. So that would be kind of a layer down to like get us centered and calmed. And so those three levels is what I wanted to share with you.
We're going amped, we're getting in flow, and then we're going to breathe and get really centered.
There you go.
I love this. By the way, does anyone notice there's a theme with Michael? It's threes, right? Yeah. We got the three strategies, and we got the three musical components. This is phenomenal. So with that, Michael, we've talked about a lot. We did the strategies for resilience. We talked about the cards, the book. We've talked about music and everything in between. But is there one question you want to leave the audience with to reflect on as we wrap up today? What might be of service for yourself or others to feel complete with our time together today? What would you like to leave us with?
Yeah. I think for leaders, because I'm guessing that's a lot of leaders listening to this, is, the question of how might I be a more radical catalyst for change in my organization?
Ooh.
Because ultimately, I think like it's easy to say, our organization does this and that, but the reality is we all have greater levels of influence than I think we tend to admit. And so that would be my invitation to folks.
Radical catalyst for change. How might I be a radical catalyst for change? I'm going to put ... through the lens of resilience and well-being.
There you go.
How might I inform or bring forward or be more conscious of or inspire action in that space? Because I think the heart of everything we're talking about, the heads and the hearts of the leaders in tech, right? So radical catalyst of change. Michael, thank you for being here. Thank you for your collaboration with us. Thank you for your heart, your voice, your skills. Thanks for playing today.
Yeah, Lisa, I want to just give you some gratitude as well. I think what you're doing here is awesome. It's innovative. It's different. And I'm grateful to be able to have the conversation with you. And I hope you continue to do this. It's such a great idea.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's fun for me too. And we've got more people commenting.
Okay, cool.
I love this. Lincoln Jesser creates beautiful house healing music. That's great. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you,
nice.
Anne-Marie. Yeah, and I think we're in it together. This conversation matters. And so if you were inspired by Michael and the conversation today, Anne-Marie's comments, thank you for playing, Anne-Marie. Any insights we've shared, please like, share, subscribe, amplify this message. It's needed. And until next time on Control-Alt-Delete with Lisa Duerre, I say make it a great day. Thanks, everyone. That's a wrap, folks. Whether you're here with us live for the reboot or caught the replay to upgrade your leadership drive, I want to say a big thank you for being a part of this experience. Your input and energy are what keep us going strong. But hold on tight, this isn't where the journey ends. Let's keep the momentum going by sharing your thoughts in the comments, spreading the word on social media, or dropping me a message. I'm all ears and ready to connect. And hey, don't forget to hit that subscribe button or ring the bell so you don't miss our next episode. If today sparked something for you, your likes and comments mean the world. They help us reach more leaders like yourself and prevent burnout. Together, we're not just leaders, we're firm leaders, upgrading our drive and rebooting our leadership game one episode at a time. Oh, and one more thing. If you're interested in bringing this valuable discussion to your teams or organization, RLD Group is here to lend a hand. Reach out via LinkedIn or email hello@rldgroupllc.com. We'd love to chat. Until next time, this is Lisa Duerre signing off with a virtual high five and or a virtual fist bump, whatever you choose.